Okay, welcome to an episode of It's Not What You Think. This is Rick.
And this is Darren.
And we are studying the Mass and going through each portion of the Mass,
Yes.
giving it our full attention. And today is the Tract.
Yeah, so interestingly...
Spelled T-R-A-C-T.
Right.
Because sometimes that T isn't and I hear track, like a track on
like a racetrack.
a racetrack or a track on a CD, music track.
Yeah.
It's Tract.
So the tract actually has some pretty defined rules. It is a series of psalms. It's meant to be sung from beginning to end. And there is no refrain, which means it doesn't repeat. It's supposed to have a start and a finish. It's supposed to be sung as an entire whole.
Mm-hmm. You know, that's pretty tricky to do as far as our modern ears are concerned.
Yes.
And you know what? I just recently was listening to an album that a buddy of mine sent me, and I was marveling at the fact that there were no repeats. And you know what it was? It was Jefferson Airplane, White Rabbit. So next time you listen to White Rabbit, notice that there aren't any repeats. It just goes.
That's interesting. So follow some of the rules of the tract.
Yeah.
Some other rules of the tract that they are generally in either the second or the eighth mode, which is just I think it's the key or the style of the notes that are within the key.
For some reason, they don't use the word key; they use the word mode.
Right.
But it's basically an organization of 8 notes.
Right.
And our modern ones that are based on Bach actually are called key signatures. The ones that were done in the church, medieval times, are called church modes. But for all intents and purposes, they're fairly similar.
So typically, tracts are sung in either the second or the eighth church mode, I should say, as opposed to the Greek modes.
Right, which is another series of... to remind our viewer, to give us a refresher, they were actually organizations of 4 notes,
yes,
but twice.
Right.
Not necessarily repeated, but here's a series of 4 notes, here's a series of 4 notes, and they put them together, and they can mix and match them, which is why the Greeks had a lot of different ones.
Interesting.
Where the church one just had the 8, and then our Bach modern
follows the key
have the
in
key,
order.
Yeah, right.
So, just to refresh, tracts are psalms, series of psalms, rarely a complete psalm, which is interesting. It's usually a series of them.
Okay.
They are sung without refrain from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
They are typically sung by a soloist, and they are in either the second or the eighth mode. My ear is not refined enough to know, in the samples that we'll listen to, whether those are the correct modes. But I would say that, generally speaking, the second church mode tends to sound more somber. The eighth church mode tends to sound more cheerful. So if you pick up on some of those feelings while you're listening, that might be a good pickup on what mode we're being sung in.
You know, I tried as like an experiment to create a visual personality of a character. Let's say like Gandalf, some lean, tall, gray-bearded, long-bearded wizard, and then associate him with a particular mode. And then when I listen to that mode, do I get the image of Gandalf? Then I would know, but I wasn't able to do that successful.
Oh, interesting. I mean, you'd really have to spend some time with the modes to hear them and kind of understand the characteristics.
Bach, I mean, that was his thing.
Right.
He wrote pieces in every single key.
Right.
And his well-tempered clavier, our audience already knows that. He writes a piano piece, like a 2-minute piano piece in every single key. Starts off with C, then he goes to C sharp, then he goes to D, then he goes to D sharp, and he just goes all the way up the scale. So like I said, I tried to... It's tricky.
Yeah.
I think you got to...
You need to be Bach in order to...
I think so.
So, our viewers may recall when we were talking about the Alleluia, that sometimes during a Mass, the Alleluia is not appropriate. So for in a requiem mass or around the Easter time, where it's more of a somber occasion, you don't want to sing the Alleluia. So a tract, so a tract would be sung instead. So interestingly as well, tracts are the most ancient form of chanting, actually tracing their roots back to the Hebrew synagogues. Because psalms being sung, and traditionally in the way that a Jewish ceremony is done, the rabbi is singing the words. Psalms are actually songs. So it really makes sense that this is something that can trace its roots back. They're not really used that often. Again, generally it tends to be as a substitute for an Alleluia. The Alleluia tends to be more well used throughout, but tracts are still there. Notably, we're going to hear a lot of melismas that stands out for tracts. So I'm interested to see where this goes, what we have in store.
All right. Well, we have lined up a standard tract Gregorian chant style.
Okay.
Well, let's give it a whirl.
All right.
Impressions?
So immediately, the first impression is this was not a soloist. This was a choir, which I think we're going to hear a lot more. I feel like the traditional soloist in the way that the histories would have been during an actual mass, right? You would expect that it would be just the priest,
right?
And hence the soloist. But I think in the modern context, we're probably going to see a lot more choirs. That being said, I did pick up on the fact that there was no refrain. It did not appear in my mind to repeat in any way. And I thought it sounded really nice.
Yeah. It was probably due to the choir that I chose. They were very, very beautiful to listen to.
And notably, I think tracing our roots back again to some of the earlier Christian chants, the Ambrosian styles, where you ended up with these melismas that had huge ranges.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're seeing a lot more of that as opposed to the sort of Gregorian or Roman style that tends to be a moderate step or two from the center, from the, what would you call, the main note of the mode. You're only seeing a deviation from a step or two, and then maybe getting up in the Ambrosian style, you're seeing these large gaps, large leaps in the melismas.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing a little bit of that as well.
Well, we have next a track from a Requiem Mass, so we should expect a little more somberness.
Yeah.
Let's give that one a listen to.
Okay. Yeah, a soloist.
Right.
But did you, I mean, when you were listening to it, did you get the sense of that somber, sad?
No, not necessarily. For me, sometimes it's hard to get emotion out of Gregorian chant for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's because it's in Latin and I don't understand the words, or if it is so bound to the range is just this.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't get a lot of somberness.
Yeah, this being a requiem, I was trying to imagine myself in a pew at a funeral and seeing if maybe that. But I think even then, just in my experience, having been to like a Catholic funeral mass, I would say it's less somber and more pensive.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where I was getting at what I was getting out of this.
I think you're right. I think it definitely evoked more pensiveness.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what this guy does. I managed to get this Franco-Flemish composer who composed during the Renaissance, and his name is Johannes Akegem.
That's an interesting name.
I probably screwed up his pronunciation. He's probably on the phone right now calling my lawyer. But he wrote. He was actually a very prolific composer. He wrote a mass, and I yanked the tract out of one of his masses. I think it's a Requiem Mass.
Oh, okay.
So let's juxtapose what he did with it to some of the Gregorian chants we've been listening to.
Sure.
Okay, well, he chose 4-part harmony.
Yeah.
Now this is this time period is the beginning of polyphony, where, to remind our viewers, there was a lot of stagnant harmony in the Gregorian chants, and then there was a very minimal harmony where maybe someone would do like a drone at the bottom, and someone would. Now, when you get into the 1400s, the Renaissance, they went all out, and they're like, let's all have a different voice and a different melodic line, and wow, man, it's some beautiful music.
Oh,
I have to say.
Yeah, definitely not consistent with some of the rules that
he broke the rules.
He was definitely breaking. But man, some of those melismas were really long in the ranges we were hearing.
Oh, they were gorgeously high.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
and then the culmination of both the female and the male voices
at
the end. Wow.
Yeah, that was
It was actually really nice.
Yeah, that was really cool.
So break all the rules you want, Johannes Occam, whatever your last name is. Break all the rules, because wow, he did a great job of that.
Yeah, he did.
And definitely I didn't get somberness. Definitely not.
No, I didn't get somberness either.
So
here's this other guy. This guy coming up. His first name is Cristobal, and I always want to say Crystal Ball, but I'm sure that's not how you pronounce it. I got another guy calling up my lawyer.
Cristobal.
See, he needs to say them from now on. Morales is his last name, and he does a tract. It's a fairly short one. Let's give that a listen.
All right.
Cristobal Morales. You know, I was a little disappointed, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I was only disappointed because here we just listened to Ock again, and wow, man, it blew us away.
Yeah.
And if I could speak for the two of us.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I was expecting, 100 years later to really blow me away, but it was like Gregorian chant.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a return to form, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the sort of neoclassical tradition took over after the Renaissance, and you know, they maybe thought, oh, we've gone too far, let's pull us back a little bit. Maybe we went back to the roots of Gregorian chant.
It might have been. I mean, just FYI, it says that Cristobal Morales was a Spanish composer of the Renaissance. He's generally considered to be the most influential Spanish composer.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean,
he laid down the law.
Yeah, well,
I guess,
the Spanish Catholics are renowned for laying down the law. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah. Well, we got another guy, and he happens to be Spanish. Thomas Luis Victoria.
Hmm.
This one's 100 years after. He wrote this in the 1600s, and he was the most Spanish. He was the most Spanish composer during the Renaissance. How do you like that? So let's give him a listen. Also just playing with
Yeah. I have to say, I think we sort of set the foundation with the first couple that we listened to of what a tract is.
Mm-hmm.
We listened to what is an artist's rendition of a tract by Johannes, and then I think we got back to the tract.
Yeah.
And it's less of a musical composition and more of a liturgical piece.
Yeah, and often in the past episodes when we've explored the Gregorian chant and we've listened to how other composers over the years, they've always added in embellishments and made it their own, where I didn't feel like they did that with the tract.
No, I don't think so either. And I mean, maybe Mozart, because he has that one piece called Requiem. It might be, but again, it's a stretch to call that a tract.
Yeah, I mean, I know there are, but from the two pieces that we just heard, they didn't really.
No,
my vote goes to Akagam.
Yeah.
He gets the Grammy Award.
Yeah, for the tract, as far as the tract goes. Mm-hmm. Although I will say, in that last piece we just listened to, there were some real long melismas that I gotta say are a breath of fresh air.
They were nominations, but they didn't win the Grammy like Akagam did.
The Grammy.
The Grammy Award. There you go. He gets it. He scored tonight. And that's all I have to say then.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the tract, it has its place in the mass, but it ain't for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's only sung for sad times. Reserve it for the shelf.
All right, that takes up all the wind out of me today, I guess.
All right, stay tuned.